Welcome. I'm not quite sure what to say yet, but there's going to be some changes to the frequency and time that these are held. I started a new position last week, and 9:30 is just going to be too rushed for me to get here. So you'll have to stay tuned. Maybe I'll post it on the Facebook page under Unveiling Truth. I'm going to think about it today and tomorrow, and what time and when. I appreciate your patience. Life's continually ebbing and flowing, and nothing's very stable for me right now. So just adjusting with whatever the schedule is that I have, and working around that in a way that's manageable for me as well. So we have to take good care of ourselves. We're the only ones that can do that. So just want to take a moment, as I'm doing, to arrive here. Noticing, scanning the body for all the subtle places that the tension is carried. Or noticing the mind and the racing quality of the mind, if it should be like that. Really incredible how we can notice that. We can notice those qualities. That too can be disturbing for us to see, but also something that we can maybe eventually come to be grateful for. So when we can't see it, there's no power to change it, and we're sometimes maybe even felt as insignificant. Noticing can feel pointless, can feel almost defeating. And we're noticing all these things, these qualities about ourselves that maybe we'd rather not see, feel, experience. Just giving ourselves complete permission to be here, just as we are, not to have to do anything or add anything or figure anything out or try to be a meditator. And just throw all that in the trash can for now. Our posture doesn't need to look any certain way. Our mind doesn't need to be any certain way. We don't have to feel anything. We don't have to be at peace or calm. These are all just ideas that we superimpose and then create these expectations to match up our experience, to decide almost whether we can shame ourselves or judge ourselves or not, or congratulate ourselves or not. Just allowing our experience to be exactly as it is. Sometimes taking a deep sigh or exhale can help just kind of let go of any of those residual tensions And to really deeply take this in, but it's okay exactly as you are. So often we can hear something like that and just dismiss it. Well, it's okay when it looks like this or feels like that. But even for just this moment, to allow yourself to be okay, to not fight whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're feeling, whatever's arising. To almost rise up that white mercy flag and just say, okay, agree with your experience as it is. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you or your experience. There is no way it should be, or it could be, if no, we let go of all of that and just be here now as it is. Just noticing how all those stories of how it could be or should be, just add more tension, add more mental chatter. So often leaving us feeling less than in some way, not whole or incapable or lacking. If that triggered something for you, this sense of lack or incompleteness or shame, just even inviting that energy to come forward, to really feel and meet it. So often it's those very feelings that we're running from through trying to compensate for them. Instead of moving away from them and compensating for them, let's just see, bring this curiosity to them, to see what they really are, to meet them. And again, if nothing appears, we don't need to create anything. It's really just your experience as it is, but just noticing if there was something that felt that inner sort of aha, that there's something there, resonated as we talked about lack or incompleteness. Just go with it. We don't need to overwhelm our system, but if there's something there, even for short moments, to go into it, to meet it. We don't have to camp out there and make this a new identity or try to fix it. Rather, it's always a sense of curiosity and wonder that can free us and liberate us. So we What are you to these feelings, emotions, and sensations? Can you be here too? Or what might I be believing that's keeping you from being here just as you are? And have this dialogue with these different parts of ourselves that resist what is. And again, treating them as young children, that we're not trying to force to be a certain way. We're curious about what it is they're feeling, what it is they want us to know. Even when we go in and maybe our children have done something that we disagree with or disapprove of, we can still have this conversation of curiosity without dismissing their wholeness in any way, without dismissing them, without taking away any of the love that's there, whether it be with our children, our spouses, our family, our friends. And we can offer this same invitation to ourselves. To not retracting any love from any part of ourselves, but rather using that, the quality of curiosity as an element of love, of really wanting to get to know and understand and feel and have empathy and compassion for these different parts of ourselves. And so, whatever is arising in your experience, whether it's a sense of lack or incompleteness or anything else, any other wave of energy or emotion, it does really the same thing. These emotions come as waves of energy that we can either allow to move through us, or we can resist and try to push away or hold on to. That nothing you think or feel needs to be excluded from this loving presence that you are. It simply notices. It notices the emotions, it notices the sensations, it even notices when the judgment and resistance comes in. And this isn't about feigning acceptance when we don't accept. There's a really intense emotion or thought pattern. It feels most true that there's not acceptance of it, to be with that, to notice that too, to include that in your awareness, to feel that no, not this, no, I don't want this. So often, instead of feeling that aspect of ourselves, we then believe it's in the way and try to force ourselves to accept something that we're really just not able to accept in the moment anyway. And so can we accept even our no's? And just noticing what that's like, to just give yourself permission to say no, to say not this, F this, I don't want this, I don't like this, whatever, however it wants to manifest, even no matter how profane the language might be. Sometimes we need to just say that to get the intensity of the no out. And again, this doesn't mean that you need to have a no or try to find the no in your experience if it's not there. We're just including this aspect as well, so that nothing is excluded. Nothing need to be pushed aside or separated from ourselves. Just knowing that deep down within us, some part of us already knows that we can't truly have peace, truly be at home within ourselves if there's this ongoing war, this ongoing fight, trying to fix or manipulate parts of ourselves or make them go away or not feel them, cover them over, repress them, act out on them. There's this me that's in there that's trying to control the emotional experience, the experience that we're having. So long as there's a me in there that's trying to control, then it's always creating this separation within us, as two parts. And as we begin to open up and pay attention, we might notice how exhausting and how futile it can be. As we continue to fight ourselves and we continue to fight others, we continue to fight the world. Not necessarily in overt ways, sometimes very subtle ways, just by condemning certain people or certain attributes in people, certain attributes of society, certain groups in society, whatever it might be that we believe should not be, should not exist, is inherently wrong or sinful or evil. And it might feel so necessary to hold on to that. So we can be so conditioned to believe that we need to hold on to that if anything is ever going to change for the good. Be so deeply conditioned that I have to say no to this. Otherwise, if I say no to this, if I don't say no to this, it means I agree with it. I condone it. I want it. But as we begin to open and explore, we can see that it doesn't necessarily have to mean that we agree with elements of society or people or parts of ourselves, and that we want them. We want to experience them. It's simply that we're not going to fight them. We're not going to cast them as outside and different and separate. and inherently wrong. It's rather this granting it permission to be, simply because it is, simply because it exists. Whether it be the experience that we're having, the emotion that we're having, whether it be something that our family did or didn't do, whether it be some political ideology or social ideology, cultural ideology. And it's fine to have opinions and ideas and preferences. But when we hold on to them in a way that excludes everything else and makes it inherently wrong, then we go to war. We go to war by creating an other that is not part of the whole. It's just noticing now, and even as we go about our day after this exercise, the ways that other is created, all the way that we separate ourselves from parts of society, from people in society, from parts of ourself. And how that then manifests in our interactions with others, with ourselves, with our society. And then if we've gone into fantasy or thinking about what this means or how this plays out, that's okay. Invitation is just to come back, to feel it, to not just think about it, but to feel it in the body, to feel what's happening. So often our energy can move up into our head as we think and fantasize, and we lose touch, we lose sense of what's happening in the body. But just noticing how that's playing out, what sensations might be arising, even connected to the thoughts, or simply by being here now. Thinking and fantasizing can be just another way that we separate ourselves from our experience, where we consciously distract ourselves from being here, from being present to whatever it is we're feeling, whatever it is that's happening. Maybe it's too uncomfortable to be in the body, and so our mind takes over in some innocent way to protect us or make us feel okay or to cope. This invitation is to come back down into the body, to really notice the contractions, how the sense of separation, what it evokes in the body and the body sensations. Or simply just what is here now? What are we feeling now? So often we go about our day and there's these emotion, just inherent in being a human being, there's this flow of emotions that rolls through us throughout the day. And we can be so oblivious that there's all of these different sensations and emotions appearing within us. We can call ourselves not really an emotional person, but yet simply to be alive, there's emotions moving, which is just energy flowing through us as life comes and manifests and appears, and there's reactions and responses and triggers. So this is these opportunities to pause and to check in with the body can really help awaken us to what's really happening in our experience, to help us notice the emotions that we might be unconsciously reacting to or recreating in our experience. We don't even have to label them. We don't have to know what emotional experience it is. The rawness of it. So again, just go into the body as much as you can. There's nothing specific that you need to see or notice. Even just holding the intention to want to notice, to want to feel or see can be enough to awaken the body to start revealing itself to you. So we'll just take a few moments in silence just to be with our own experience as it is now. And maybe just seeing if there's any words of kindness or love that want to appear for the self, for just acknowledging this life, or compassion, that it's okay, or I love you, or I'm here for you. You're okay just as you are. I love you just as you are. Whatever resonates or whatever comes, whatever feels inspired for you. And even again, Our bodies are so physiological, so somatic. Those words through the touch to make it touch even deeper beyond just the words. So if it feels inspired to rub your arms or give yourself a hug, there for you. That I want to know you, I care about you. That I care about your suffering, the suffering. Or even gently over the brow, down the sides of the face, just gently stroking can convey this loving presence. Transcends our words, but really makes it feel much more real. And I love you just as you are. Maybe letting out a sigh. And as we're ready, we can slowly begin to open our eyes. If it feels inspired to meet each other, or you can cast your gaze gently around the room. Seeing again if we can move from this place of looking outward to just being this open, receptive space where we're still grounded in our bodies. Our shared humanity. Allowing ourselves to be seen in our most vulnerable places. Which I feel is what we all deeply want and long for. And sometimes are too scared what that means to be in our full vulnerability, allow ourselves to be truly deeply seen as we are. In some ways, this might feel more approachable or more safe because it's not, there's this virtual distance. And it's not to try to make ourselves not feel scared. If we feel scared, not feel vulnerable. If we feel vulnerable, we can only be vulnerable when we're no longer scared of being vulnerable. When we no longer feel the vulnerability. But then it's not really vulnerability. And truly allow all parts of ourselves to be seen, to be met, to be felt. And I really feel no different than you. Simply by being here, some moments feel a lot more vulnerable than others. Depends. We all have our own things that allow us to feel, we feel more vulnerable about. And that's okay. Maybe some of the things that I say or do or would leave you feeling very vulnerable. but not projecting that on anyone or anything else, that that's necessarily my experience. But to tap into our own vulnerability. Our own sincerity of heart. I might just share a little bit today, just again, the vulnerability that I experience. You know, in some ways, being in this so-called label is, I don't know how you would label it, what I am or what I do. I guess I'm trained as a counselor, so if I was to be the counselor or the teacher or the guide, a sense of having overcome something can still linger in my experience. But even just noticing this weekend, there's intense, this journey continues, that there's more and more and more that wants to be seen, to be felt, to be met. And sometimes it can be overwhelming. That I didn't want to see anything more, know anything more. It was just too much. But being willing to just be in that too, to feel the anger, to feel this is too much. I can't anymore. Maybe that will happen, but if we hold on to this idea that we'll overcome certain emotions, then we're just adding this element of expectation to our experience that just judges and gets in our own way, judges and shames ourselves. That if there's anger, if there's overwhelm, can we simply let it be here? Just noticing within myself that it actually felt so good to just be angry, to be pissed off at everything that's been happening, to everything that I'm feeling, to be overwhelmed, to be pissed off. And we can think of that's not spiritual, or I shouldn't be pissed. I'm not then accepting it. But the acceptance is even in accepting that there's anger here. And this is kind of the journey that I've been going on, is this all of this despair arising, and then sitting with that despair, underneath that despair is this fire, this sense of anger, resentment, bitterness. And if I had this attitude of I need to just be accepting of my experience, I could have stuffed that anger back down. No, this is just what life is, so I have to accept it as it is, telling myself another story when really there was all this, F this, I don't want this, this is too much, I can't do this. To allow that to come forth too is the truth of the experience. Not that we need to go looking for something. I remember years ago following spiritual teachings that were like, let that anger out. And I was like, but I don't feel any anger. Looking back, I can see that there was a lot of anger. It just wasn't in my awareness. But that's okay. It wasn't what was needing to be met at that moment, apparently. Otherwise, it would have come into our awareness. I say in terms of whatever emotional experience it is. For me, it was anger at that time. Then we can create another story around that. Well, what's wrong with me that I can't feel this anger, this rage? I'm stuck with it. This isn't to push our experience in any way. It's just simply to be with what is. was so interesting to see how myself in certain ways. I could feel all of this energy to like reach out and start re-engaging in certain ways with certain people, with certain activities that I've really haven't been doing. All of these ways that used to nourish me were like, there was this fire that was like, take care of this. Take care of yourself. Take care of this life. And then watching how it evolved into this, like, this, did some sitting and not even wanting to be in the sitting, like wanting to just be the rebel and not even try to show up, not even really wanting to show up. And how that in some ways was a metaphor, a deeper metaphor. It wasn't that I just didn't want to. And again, it can be interesting now that I share these aspects of myself, what that does in you. If there's these ideas, maybe, oh, well, it shouldn't be like that, or that's not what a liberated state would be, or we can judge and evaluate and compare based on our ideas, of what it should look like or what the human experience should be like if we're truly liberated. And this is again pointing us back to ourselves, that there is no, it's meeting whatever is as it is. It's not trying to get to a certain experience where we don't have certain experiences anymore, but can we meet what is? So to feel that fire in the belly, to feel that all of that bitterness and resentment and hostility even towards life. Just let it come, let it burn through me or through us as we feel these deep, sometimes dark or repressed energies. And then watching as, not that this is a cycle that needs to be repeated in your experience. Again, this is one of the limitations of sharing personal experiences, is then we can then use that as a model of how our experience should look. But this isn't to say that this is a model. This is to share a description of what can happen. I'm not claiming that emotions or that there's no more resentment or bitterness, but noticing how it started to evaporate, the story behind it, the intensity, the resistance to just being here that this anger was creating started to soften, and there was more space for me to just be here. There was more space around it. It didn't feel so intense. The story around it started to evaporate. And there's even this spark of love that came. And there was this subtle joy, very subtle joy, I must say. But there was this, like, in not fighting the experience and not telling myself that it was not okay to be angry, that it was not okay to feel this. There was none of that appearing. It was just like, I just went with it. And sometimes it can be just sitting and noticing the sensations and allowing them to burn through. And sometimes what I needed was to just allow myself to have all those angry thoughts and not try to suppress any part of it, to not try to spiritualize it or make myself want to be somewhere that I didn't want to be. There was this little inkling of love, even, that suddenly all of my life sucks and this sucks and everything's so hard turned into this clearer seeing where it's the truth of the situation can be perceived. It's like I could start to see, okay, when the anger was there, it just felt like the story was so real, that everything was real and there would nothing is good. And as that story started to lift, there was space around it to see it in a new perspective. And this inkling of love creeped in, where it was like, I can see how life is using this to grow me in certain ways. That all of these life experiences that seem so hard and so difficult and so unfair are sort of, what's the word? I want to say dismantling, but maybe that's an okay word. Dismantling the sense of righteousness and entitlement and basically humbling me in ways that I never knew I needed to be humbled. Mystifying, why would it be this way, this intense? Why would life create me and then give me all of this pain? But yet, then when we sit with that and allowing that to open into a deeper truth, we can begin to see art. How that in some ways connects us even more deeply with what is, more deeply with others. Seeing the shared humanity that in others that we may not have ever felt like there was anything that was shared. And for some gift of God, I guess you could say, I received this person that is in a wheelchair who has now entered my life through the work that I'm doing. Such a teacher. Sometimes it can appear as well, then I should be more grateful than I am for all that I have. And we can do that and shame ourselves. Or to really connect with those parts of ourselves that it evokes. This fear that we really have no control over our circumstances in life. Of what it's like to truly surrender. When we lose control in certain ways. Even though we've never really had control, but when it appears, it becomes more and more obvious. Maybe more and more limited in some ways. Or even to awaken those parts of ourselves that are resistant and hostile towards life and say, why me? Or this is too hard. Or this is not fair. And this. If that feels authentic and true, but so often that can be a cover up for meeting some of these deeper, darker emotions that can be evoked. Can be an opportunity to connect with that part of ourselves that feels life is unfair, or why me, this is too hard. In some ways, then comparison can be this healthy thing where we compare ourselves to someone else or someone else's life situation. We can see the parts that make us feel the most insecure in seeing their situation, especially if we deem it as bad. Or it can highlight, if we're trying to be grateful and it doesn't feel sincere, it can bring to light all of the parts of ourselves that are bitter and angry, or feel that life isn't fair or tough or hard. And we have to be very patient, start creeping in. As super ego starts getting a grip again and separating us from ourselves and our experience by deeming certain parts as good and certain parts as bad. Coming back to the meditation to welcome all parts, that nothing needs to be excluded. But if there's a why me, can it just be there? This why me? To not then invest in the thoughts and stories around it, but to feel that quality of why me, this bitterness, or there's maybe it's touching on this core belief that I'm not good enough, or I'm not lovable, or I'm not worthy. To go underneath the story of that, as we did last week, to really examine the belief that's being triggered. The belief about self, the belief about life. So can seem, and it can even feel like this is like this roundabout loop that I'm taking us on, that there's no consistency, there's no, like, what is she talking about? Or there's so much contradiction, and that's okay. I've said it before and I'll say it over and over again, that there's no one right way to be with our experience. So these are all offerings. And we notice the ones maybe that feel most inspiring or resonate with something, and then we can go with those. Or maybe notice the ones that we have the most resistance to, and be curious about what that resistance is about. Or just notice what feels most true and authentic in the moment, the most authentic expression, or even asking ourselves, or that part of ourselves, whatever part of ourselves might be triggered, what it really needs, what it really longs for, what it needs from us. This can all be ways for us to tap deeper into ourselves and become our own guru, so that we're really following and listening deeply to what feels true for us, not putting our faith out there in someone else and assuming their experience and their way of being is the right way, or that the way that I need to follow for ourselves, or figure anything out, or go through that process of not knowing and screwing up, or discerning what's true or not true. We can hope to skip over all of that. Into our authentic expression is such a gift. And that only we know what's opening us or what's closing us back down, what's separating us and what's connecting us, what feels true or not true. And even if we're not sure, even if there's confusion, we're the ones that know that we're confused. And allowing ourselves to be in that confusion, to allow the wisdom that's living this life to live it, to guide it. And this doesn't mean then that we push away all ideas from others. We can still hold them in this is how I've approached counseling and so many spiritual teachings is holding them as this possibility of truth, this curiosity, oh, that does sound or that does resonate, and then taking it and experimenting with it in my own life. I'm not assuming it's going to be true or that they're telling me something to feel myself becoming more and more contracted and more dense and more identified as like the meditator or the one that needs to figure something out or get somewhere or the one that's doesn't know. And so that's all important feedback. If it's leaving us feeling more and more contracted or dense in our experience, more and more dismissive, that I had kind of used some spiritual teachings to skip over feeling some of the anger that I was feeling. But again, we have to be so gentle and kind to ourselves because we don't know in that moment. It wasn't like I was intending to skip anything over. But now looking back, I can see how in some ways it was being used in a way to escape parts of myself. But that's okay. We don't need to get lost in another story about how that's some flaw or deficiency, or so long as we can remain in this open space where things can keep appearing and showing and revealing, and we are willing to see whatever wants to be shown, then we can just move forward in this sense of freedom and trust, a sense of wholeness and completeness where we don't feel like there's something that I should know that I don't know. There's something I should be feeling that I don't feel. So when we know the sincerity is that we're willing to see all the power we really have is just being willing to be open, willing to be shown, willing to be directed, redirected. And then that way it's okay, even if we step in the wrong way and feel like, even though it might seem like it was wrong or it took us off track, it was really helping us find our track, find what works for us. Even those things that seem to be disastrous or failures, or that from our limited mind, it can be so easy to just judge them and evaluate them and dismiss them. It's wrong. But in some ways, without those experiences, without those wrong turns or those experiences that leave us contracted or more separate from ourselves or others, if we're in this place of openness, they can then show us. They're also way showers. They're showing us where we've path, what is on track or off track, that we go more and more with a felt sense of what feels in harmony, what feels in alignment. It doesn't mean that it's going to feel good. It doesn't mean that it's going to be pleasurable all the time, but it'll have this sense of harmony where we feel connected. Okay. Take the bits that leave you feeling more open and spacious. Really be gentle and patient and allowing yourself to make mistakes, allowing yourself to get it wrong, allowing your experience to feel totally maybe effed up or delusional or neurotic, however it appears. It can be such a gift that we give ourselves, to just give ourselves permission to be crazy, neurotic, wrong, off course. Can just alleviate so much pressure, so much added burden. As we think these expectations are serving us But in many ways, they're actually limiting us by just adding all of these judgments into our experience. So again, we just notice all of that. Let's take it in and become more acutely aware of how it shows up in our experience. And everything is a gift. This is it for today. I'm really not sure what to say at this moment in terms of what's going to happen from here on out. So I do recommend you check Unveiling Truth on Facebook page, and I'll post an update as to when I'll be doing the next live broadcast. But I know I keep changing my mind and things keep shifting. But again, I appreciate your patience for being with me through all these shifts and changes. And yeah, I'm just trying to honor what's going on in my own life and my own process and not push things too much. So yes, check Unveiling Truth on Facebook for updates for the rest of the week and to continue into the future. I might just post week by week what the schedule is going to be as I kind of find my own way, find the balance of what's feeling kind of on track for me. So check there for updates, and we'll see you next time. Namaste.